Hello, my name is Grace Jew Miller. I'm the director of ECHO's North America Regional Impact Center here in Fort Myers, Florida. Today, I want to introduce you to the Ministry of ECHO, which has been in existence for over 40 years. And we have here in North America, in Florida, a 52-acre farm. Our ministry is basically to give hope to the hungry by using sustainable agriculture and appropriate technology and creation care and good stewardship of the land to help farmers, small-scale farmers, to improve their lives by increasing their productivity and nutrition of the crops they are growing. One of the things we're going to be doing is showing urban garden techniques and how even if you don't own land and don't have a lot of access to land, you can grow trees with fruit, vegetables, and even some high-value crops that can give you income.
Hi there, my name is Jared Bond and I am the urban garden intern at ECHO's Global Farm. And my job here is basically to tend this space and to help generate ideas for how people can grow plants and produce food in an urban environment. It is a little bit more challenging to do so than traditional agriculture, right? Because you're not planting in the ground. And here we're wanting to show people how they can grow food without having access to soil or their own land, which is really important in our world today because the population worldwide is becoming more urbanized. One way of using gardening practices in an urban context is using things that you would otherwise throw out or not consider as like being able to grow plants in. So here beside me is a tire, and most places in the world actually have access to things like tires or similar things. And you can just fill this up with soil or other like wood chips or any organic matter, and you can actually grow plants in this. So this is very helpful for people who live in places where they have no land of their own. And you can put this tire like on your patio or even on your rooftop and grow food in it to eat, where otherwise you wouldn't be able to grow any of your own food at all. So the first demo that I would like to share with you today is being able to grow trees, specifically fruit trees, in containers. Behind me here we have a carambola or a star fruit, and it's actually growing in an old repurposed swimming pool. It's kind of fascinating because there's not much soil here. So compared to a tree that would be growing in the ground, this tree has limited resources available to it, yet you can see it's still growing very well, and it actually does produce a good amount of fruit. But this is also a good point to talk about some of the challenges that are involved with urban gardening. One is just limited nutrient availability, and the second is water. Since it's such a small area this tree is growing in, that tree is using up nutrients throughout its lifespan. So you need to fertilize this tree somewhat often in order to keep it healthy and keep it producing enough fruit. Otherwise, it's just gonna kind of fade with time. And the second thing is watering. Since it is such a small amount of soil in here and it is like out of the ground, there's gonna be higher rates of evaporation and the soil is gonna dry out a lot quicker compared to if the tree was on the ground. So you need to keep up on your watering and you need to keep up on your fertilizing applications if you're wanting to grow any plants in containers, but specifically trees. So one of the things that you may notice in this demo is that there is a ground cover crop growing alongside the tree. Now this is perennial peanut specifically, but you can grow any sort of ground cover that you would like. The main reason we have it here is it helps shade the soil, so it reduces water loss through evaporation and it keeps the soil more cool. It doesn't allow the direct sun to be beating down on it all day. But perennial peanut is also a nitrogen fixer, so it also helps with fertilization to an extent. One of the interesting demos we have in our urban garden is what we call a 100-fold bed. Now this bed is unique because it saves us a lot of time on our watering. And basically how it's set up is you have a concrete block barrier all around your planting area. And the lower layer holds the water reservoir. And basically all that is it's just crushed up rock filled up to the brim with water. And then on top, this last concrete block layer is where you have your soil. So you plant your plants in that top layer, and as they grow, the roots go down and they start to touch that water reservoir. So as the soil on top dries out, those plants are still able to access water deep beneath. And that's how it saves you time on watering, because this thing is full of water. Those plants can access that water for days. I mean, I don't have to fill this bed up, but once every 1 to 2 weeks. Most of the other containers in this garden, I'm watering every 2 or 3 days. So it really does save you time on watering. And an added benefit to this bed, if you use concrete blocks, you have more space in the middle of these blocks which you can plant stuff in. So here I have onions growing. I also grew a little bit of parsley, but it does really well with herbs or small flowers.
I'm going to demonstrate how you use a tire garden for planting. As you probably know, tires can be found all over the world, and it's trash that really needs to be recycled. And here we have one idea. So you get a tire like this. This one has been cut and inverted, but you don't have to cut. You have to cut, but you don't have to invert. And to cut it, you just go around the rim with a sharp machete or razor or any kind of saw or knife, and you're going to cut this rim until it comes apart. Okay, so this, we've already cut the rim and we've inverted it. Now the challenge of inverting a tire the first time is kind of hard, but once you get the hang of it, when I worked in Haiti, the Haitian farmers could invert these in just a couple of minutes. Now a novice like me and some of my students with me, it took us like 30 minutes to invert one tire, so that was not very efficient. But the reasons why you might want to invert it is it does increase your volume, and it also looks better. And some people like the look. If you don't like to go through inverting, you don't have to invert it. You can still plant. So once the rim is cut, you're going to put a layer of plastic down so that your plants and your media does not fall through. And then you put this back on. So now you've secured it. Then you want to put some kind of absorbent fabric, like a wick, so that when you water this and you use a pot, put it in the middle, and then you put your medium, which can be corn cobs, pine cones, sawdust, wood chips. In this case, we're going to use plastic bottles. Okay, you can crush them, or you don't have to. The reason is you don't really need soil to grow plants. What you need is water, fertilizer, and something that the plants can anchor to. And the idea of rooftop or urban gardens is you don't want a lot of weight, because you may have to move this container around. So the plastic fills up the tire. You can also use mulch. So you can use mulch and fill it up. I'll need a pot to put in the middle. And the idea is you're recycling things. You don't need soil. This is just mulch. You can use sawdust. You can use wood chips. Like I said, pine cones or corn cobs, whatever you have around in your area. So I'm filling it with some aluminum cans. Again, aluminum preferred over tin because it's lighter, because weight is an issue, especially if it is really going on your roof of your house or of your hut. You don't want heavy things on the roof. So I'm filling this up, and the reason for the pot in the middle is this way, once it's all filled with your plants and all your media, you can water right directly into this pot, and the water will go into that wicking system because I have this fabric down there and spread throughout the plant. So as we fill this, I'm going to finally put some plants in here. And we're going to put some more of this mulch on here. Okay, so now we're ready for the plants. We are planting some squash here. And some eggplant. And that's it. You can continue to cover it with more mulch or anything to, at this point I'm covering it so that I'm protecting desiccation or drying up of the roots. So to keep it covered, you can cover it with more organic matter like sawdust or pine cones or corn cobs or shredded banana leaves or rice husk. But that step is really to just keep the roots from drying up. And this completes the building of a tire garden. All right, now I'm going to irrigate. As I said, I'm going to start with this center pot, but because I just planted, I'm going to actually directly go over each seedling, make sure it's very, very saturated. This transplant time is critical for the survival of your plant. Now you may want to ask, can I directly seed on here? Yes, of course you can. I would recommend having started some seedlings, but if you must direct seed of plants that normally would be directed seeded in your garden, I think that's fine. So the finished product, like I said, is the tire garden, which is easy to transport even with somebody the strength of me. And you can take it, move it around your garden, and produce food for your family.
So in this demo, I just want to show you how you can use something like an old pallet to grow food in. It's not something I would have originally thought of, but basically what you can do is you can take some sort of fabric or plastic, and we have stapled it all the way around the back side of this pallet. The idea is these slats will help keep the soil covered and like shaded to an extent, so you don't have to use as much mulch. And perhaps it'll also help us a little bit with weed control as well. So basically we're gonna fill this pallet with some wood chips and some old plastic bottles just to take up some space. Other than that, I plan on just using some old mulch. So now that we've got this whole pallet garden filled with our organic media, we can plant our veggies. Again, like, it's just preference. I don't think it matters exactly like what you want to plant. Something like this, tomatoes and peppers would probably do just as well. So as I plant these, you'll notice like I don't have it filled all the way up to like the brim with mulch or soil. And I don't think it has to be. Remember, these plants, they basically just need water and nutrients. They just need a little bit of some sort of substrate in order to like anchor to and have their roots growing on. So it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to look good. I mean, you're doing this to grow food. So you can make it look as you will, but basically that's the idea. Just make sure the plant, you know, is receiving sunlight. It's not buried underneath these wooden slats. And over time, that'll hopefully grow and sprawl out all over this thing, and you might not even be able to tell you had a pallet there to begin with.
Okay, I'm going to demonstrate how you can use trash, stuff you have around, to make a planter. So these are grocery bags. These happen to be Walmart, but I'm going to triple the layers. So I have triple layered this, and I'm going to fill it with some organic matter. And in this case, I have some corn cobs. this is to add matter into this bag to keep it stiff, okay, so that you can keep it upright, and also because you want something for the roots to anchor to. And here I have some pine cones. Now obviously these bags may not last more than one growing season, but for many people this is a viable alternative if you can't afford more expensive containers, and it will give you a crop in one season. So I'm just rolling down the edge a little bit, and I'm going to put my vegetable, this is eggplant, in here. Now remember, you also have to be aware of how big your vegetable is going to get, so this is not a big container, so we don't want it to get too competitive as they get bigger. So I'm just putting 2 eggplants in here. And believe it or not, this container will last a season until your eggplant gets big enough to produce the fruit. One thing that you could do is to add some holes, probably about 1 or 2 centimeters above the bottom, just for drainage, so that this doesn't, in case there's a big rainstorm, just fill up and drown the plants. So that's it. There's your container garden. And is it movable? Yes, very movable.
So in this demonstration, I'm going to show you kind of how to make a different type of sack garden. This one is out of an old coffee sack. And the cool thing about this one is it's made out of like jute fibers, which are like just a biodegradable fiber. So you don't have to worry about this thing breaking down like a plastic sack would. But you know, given your context, use what you have on hand. You can use plastic sacks too. But this guy it'll do its thing for about a year, and then it starts decomposing and you're gonna wanna get a different container. So basically, if you're making a sack garden using one of these canvas sacks, you wanna have a central portion in the sack where you're gonna water it. I mean, this thing's gonna be full of organic matter and soil. And another thing about these things is that the water will leach out pretty quickly and it'll dry because it's standing up, it's in the wind. So you want a central way that you can water into the sack, and the water's gonna go throughout the whole volume. The way I do that, and the way I've learned, is so I open the sack up and I expose the bottom, and then I use this old PVC ring. Now you could use like an old coffee can that's had the bottom knocked out, but I just put that in there to act as a temporary structure for this rock, this crushed rock that I'm gonna pour in through the bottom. And you can use like wood chips here or something else, but the main purpose of this is, 1, it acts as a filler, so I'm not having to use as much soil or mulch, but 2, the water is gonna move through this a lot quicker than it would in soil, and a lot more freely. So I just fill this up with some of this gravel. One more added benefit to this is it makes your sack a little bit more heavy, so it keeps it in place. It's not going to tip over as easy. So now this whole container is full of this gravel. I'm going to leave that there for the moment, and I'm going to start adding my organic material. Now, if you fill this whole bag with soil, that's like a lot of dirt, right? It's a lot of soil that's probably not going to be adequately used. The stuff on the bottom is not going to be used by the plants that are growing at the top. So I'm going to fill it up with some old corn cobs and some of these pine cones here. And again, like, use whatever you have available. This is just stuff that we have on the farm that's left over. Otherwise it would be like waste, you know, we'd be composting it or something, and we can use it here to grow plants. So far the sack garden has corn cobs and pine cones in the bottom, and then I added a mixture of like sand and compost in there, and that's basically just gonna, as we shake this bag, it's gonna kind of settle in there between all that other stuff and just help fill the bag out and give the plant something to actually grow on and grow in. The last step I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna take out that mold I had that I was pouring the rocks into. So as I take it out, I'm gonna kind of spin it and just kind of rattle it so that rock kind of slides out in place. And so now we have that column of rock in the middle of the bag, and that's what we will water when we water this sack garden. That way we're not washing our soil out or anything, and it's going to go through that column and water the whole volume of soil. So the last step is we're ready to plant. And in this case, I've got some squash here. And this is just a bushing variety. So it's going to grow well in this small space. But think of it, like this bag could be twice the size, and you could have some sort of vining squash or even a watermelon that would just trellis kind of over the bag and make it into like a semi-vertical garden. Also, if this bag were taller, you could make the most out of it by cutting little slits or cuts in the side and growing plants directly out of the side of the sack as well. So you'd make more efficient use of your space. But that's how you make a sack garden.
All right, we're gonna demonstrate what to do with these old jugs. They could be jugs of juice or water or milk. But here, what we've done is we've cut the bottom off and just secured it to this board. Now, this works with a staple gun or a nail, and you may have to experiment to see what holds it up best for your type of container, and whether you have issues with wind gusts or heavy rains, you may have to add a support on the bottom as well. This one is the opposite, so you have used this half for that, which is this, and then these are the other half, which has the lid. And this arm actually is where this bamboo stick has come through, and these are all hanging on the bamboo sticks, and we've secured that there. So you can see we have some plants in here. This is oregano. These are some flowers. You do need to realize that this kind of container will not support plants that are going to get really big, like pumpkins or watermelons, but for herbs and smaller plants that would work. So we're just going to demonstrate this one. We've got some mix of sand and soil. I'm going to put it in here. We can add, this is a deeper container, so we can add some filler like this can, and some more sand and soil. Again, you can also use mulch, pine cone, sawdust, wood chips, whatever you've got. Okay, fill it some more. And I've got my seedling ready to go. And then we'll fill it with some more. Now you notice these will be on a slant, and you're going to say, will the plants grow on a slant? Yes, they will adjust to gravity, and they will keep growing. They may start to bend towards the earth, but they will still produce fine. One important thing in any kind of container garden is drainage. So here I'm going to poke some holes just about a centimeter from the bottom so that it will drain, especially if during the rainy season you do that. So just make sure you have some holes for drainage.
Another demo we have here in the urban garden is what we call wicking beds. And so this bed kind of works somewhat similarly as a 100-fold, but the only difference is there is not nearly as much resources that are put into these beds. You can see that it's very short. I only have these small concrete pavers here that make out the frame, but of course people can use bamboo or sticks, whatever they have, just to make a frame from which to grow your plants in. But the bed is made up really of only carpet on the bottom layer or cardboard, and then a thin layer of soil, and then on top I have a mulch just to kind of shade the soil and keep it cool. But this is the type of bed you would use if you did not have much organic matter to use for your plants. And it shows how you can grow plants with like hardly any soil. The way you water it is through these 5-gallon buckets in the back. They have the lid on the bottom, but there's holes in the lid. So you fill these buckets up with water and like a soluble fertilizer, and then you invert the bucket on the bed. And the carpet or the cardboard actually wicks that water, kind of like a candle wick, throughout the whole bed. And so as parts of the bed dry out during the day, the bucket will release more water accordingly, and the bed stays kind of moist throughout the day instead of like drying out completely, which it would probably do otherwise because it is such a thin layer of soil. But yeah, these beds are a great option to use in places where resources are very minimal and you might not have access to soil or other materials to grow plants in. So here's a good shot where you can actually see that base layer of the wicking bed. We're using carpet here, but people can use old t-shirts or any sort of material that actually holds water. But yeah, so that carpet or old clothes are basically just acting as a mini water reservoir for the plants to attach their roots to and suck up the moisture that they need. So this is one more demo we would like to talk with you about. It's actually my favorite in the urban garden, just because it's such an interesting way to use something you would otherwise like use for a different purpose. So here we have rain gutters, or eaves troughs is another name for them, but they're filled with mulch. So now that you've seen what an eaves trough garden looks like, we can build one together. So here I have my old piece of gutter, but you cut your gutter to your desired length, and then you want to make sure you drill some drainage holes in there, about like pencil width in diameter. It could be bigger or smaller, depending on what you have. And then on the ends, you can do a couple different things. You can put like a piece of wood or some sort of barrier there to keep water from flowing out. Or if you want a smaller amount of water that can stay in there, you can put a strip of caulking or like putty in there. But now we can fill it. I'm gonna fill it with wood chips, and I've got this pot here. The only thing that this pot does is it serves as a central location where I can pour water in when I water. I don't have to water the whole trough. I can just pour it in there, and it's gonna kind of percolate out throughout the whole trough. So we want a pot in the center, and then I'm just gonna try to graciously spread these wood chips out. So I have this this piece of lettuce here, or bok choy I believe it is, from a previous trough garden I made. I just have it here to show you kind of how much the roots develop even amongst like a wood chip media. I mean, you can see how solid that is. I can hold the plant and it still maintains its form. So these gardens still do a good job of keeping these plants alive and allowing them to thrive even. But now we can go ahead and plant. Everything's filled. I got my watering cup in there. And today I'm going to choose to plant eggplant in this trough. Again, as I water, I'm just going to pour it in the middle here. So that's just allowing all the excess water to run out, and you're not going to be drowning the roots of your plants in inches of standing water. As we conclude our time together today, Grace and I just want to say thank you for joining us. I hope that you were encouraged by the different demonstrations that we shared, and that you feel equipped to use the tools and the materials you have around you, no matter if you live in a village or a city, that you can know now that there is stuff around you that you can use to grow plants.
Thank you again for joining us. I love showcasing urban gardening because it really is a part of a perfect technology where you use what you have to make what you need to do what you need to do. And I would love to hear your ideas. Please share it with ECHO. Join us in our network, echocommunity.org. It's free, and this is where people like-minded can exchange ideas and ask questions. I also encourage you to join ECHO as we have workshops throughout the year. Our next one is in July, Tropical Agricultural Development. It's a general introduction to tropical agriculture. We have one in September that is TAD 2, and we're going to focus on food forests and agroforestry. And also in November, in the 12th through the 15th, we will have our annual International Ag Conference here in Fort Myers. And I ask that you join us. We'll have over 200 delegates from around the world discussing, listening to plenary speakers, and doing workshops on the farm. Thank you again, and I hope that we will see you either at echocommunity.org or in person someday.